Hayden here. Now, Man in the Mirror is a podcast where I talk about skincare, fragrance, grooming from a male perspective. And usually there's a guest and we have a rummage around their bathroom cabinet and find out about some of the products they enjoy and cover self-care, self-image and all those good things. Now, this is episode 8. And I do something a bit different, which I also did at the end of the last season. But this episode, I'm afraid, is just me. There's a few things to tell you about, so I wanted to do that. Also to tell you about some of the products that I'm enjoying at the moment. But yeah, I'm afraid you have just me. It's Hayden Williams this week on Man in the Mirror. Let's go. Now, the first thing to tell you about on this bonus mini pod is the Barnes Fragrance Fair. Now, regular listeners might have heard me mention this to a couple of guests recently, and it's an event that I've been a part of since its inception, really, which was 2 years ago. So this will be the third Barnes Fragrance Fair, and it happens in West London, in Barnes, in Leafy Barnes, a lovely part of West London. There's a beautiful pond in the middle, and it really is a little idyllic spot that's very well to do and very nice. And they have lots of festivals at Barnes there. I think there's a book festival, there's a children's festival, all kinds of things. And one of my friends and the organizer of the event, Amanda Carr, lives in Barnes. She's a Barnes resident and I guess is part of that scene, and she's a big part of the fragrance community. She has an Instagram profile called We Wear Perfume and also a website of the same name, and has worked in the industry for a long time and came up with this idea of the Barnes Fragrance Fair, which is grown and become this fantastic event for the whole industry. And what's lovely about it is, whereas often we go to some events that are essentially just for the trade or for the press, so which is, you know, I'm incredibly fortunate to get to go to those kind of events, but we don't often get to invite the consumers in and the customers of fragrance. And to my mind, this is the only event that does this in the UK, and that's why it's been welcomed with such open arms. It's a lovely day, and there's lots of stall holders from indie and niche perfume brands. They have lots of stalls, and you can go in for free and chat to the brand owners, the founders, sometimes the perfumers, and they'll be, you know, chatting to people and obviously giving people the opportunity to sample and to buy. But as well as that, there are talks and workshops and special events. Now, some of those are ticketed, so all the information is at the Barnes Fragrance Fair website, which is barnesfragrancefair.com, and they're also on Instagram at Barnes Fragrance Fair, and Barnes is spelled Barnes. So it's the barnesfragrancefair.com and at Barnes Fragrance Fair on Instagram. Now, I'm doing 2 talks. I'm doing a talk in the morning called Scents and Songs with Roger Miles, who is the archivist of the Olympic Studios in Barnes, which is this amazing historic studio complex that has had all kinds of people recording there over the years, such as Rolling Stones, Hendrix, Zeppelin, Prince, all manner of incredible music names. The Barnes Olympic Studios is now an art cinema. Actually, it was changed into being an independent cinema a few years ago, but in fact they are now going to reopen the top floor as a recording studio again, but I don't think it's quite open just yet, but it's returning to its roots. But it's a great space for us to do the Scents and Songs talk, and what it is I suppose if you can think of it as a musical sniff-along, and we are pairing 6 songs that were recorded at the Olympic Studios, and I have matched them to a fragrance. So there'll be an opportunity for the audience to sniff along with us, and we'll talk about it in a really interactive way. It definitely isn't a kind of lecture where the audience has to sit there in silence. And we've done a version of this over the last couple of years, and the previous 2 have actually been with specific brands. So we've matched songs with fragrances from a particular brand, but this time it's carte blanche. So Roger's chosen a short list of songs that were recorded there, and I've matched them with a fragrance. And as much as anything, you know, I'm well aware that it's a very subjective thing, and it's not like these are the only fragrances that would match to a certain song. But really, I'm just trying to get across this idea that there's interesting and different ways to approach fragrance, and doing it through other senses and other art forms is often a really good way in. And it's something we talk about on this podcast a lot, isn't it? And, talk to lots of founders and perfumers who are often multidisciplinarians, and they work in other art forms such as music or art or literature. So for me, I've just found this to be a great way to increase my understanding of both art forms, really. But often I'll have a record on, and I'll hear a certain song and think, well, what fragrance would match this, or the other way around. I'm wearing a fragrance and thinking, God, does this remind me of a certain song? And we had Thomas Dunkley on this season, one of the earlier episodes, and he spoke about this very eloquently, about how it's often useful to think about fragrance in terms of textiles and colors and movies and songs and all those things. So this is just a form of that. So it certainly isn't me saying, God, this is the only fragrance that would match this song, but just a certain approach, and we'll hopefully have some fun over an hour at 9:30 in the Olympic Studios in Barnes. It's called Scents and Songs with myself and Roger Miles. So please do come along. I think there's still a few tickets available, so I'll put all the links on the website. And the other one is at 2:00. Now, this is called Men Smell. Now, it's obviously a tongue-in-cheek title, but really, I've put together this panel. It's a panel discussion called Men Smell. But I think it's really informed from what I've been doing on this podcast and talking to different men each week. And it's not that it's absolutely that everyone's welcome to this talk, but I found, and it was probably one of the reasons that I started the podcast in the first place, that I wasn't always hearing male voices in this space. And it's such a delicate area, isn't it? It's not, it's not saying anything that's anti-women, but really, we talk a lot, and women talk a lot about, hearing their own voices in whatever forum it might be. And I think it's just as valid in fragrance to say, what's the male experience of buying fragrance, enjoying it, shopping for fragrance, reading things about fragrance online. So it's certainly not saying this is a discussion purely about male fragrances. We're not gendering the fragrances themselves. It's more of just a panel discussion about fragrance from a male perspective. Now, my guests are going to be a couple of people that you might know from the podcast. We have Adam Hurley, who is a grooming and fragrance journalist who's written for GQ and Forbes, who now lives in Portugal, and he's very kindly flying over for this, which is amazing. So Adam's going to be on the panel. Now, if you remember his episode, really so knowledgeable about the whole sector and brings his journalistic skills to play. So he'll be there. Vesa Carlho, who is the buyer at Phoenix, who you may remember, he was also a previous guest, and he's been the buyer for fragrance at Harrods and now heads up the buying team for beauty at Phoenix. So he will be on the panel, as will TJ Talk Sense, who is a young guy that's making real waves on Instagram and probably even more so on TikTok. And I thought it was important to have a younger guy on there. He's in his 20s, I think, but has a really active young following and does brilliant stuff on TikTok. And I think one of the things that I want to cover in this panel talk is just this phenomenon of young men getting more interested and engaged in fragrance. We assume that's purely a good thing. That's more people, discovering this world that I love so much. I think sometimes it gets a bit of negative press online. Is it always a good thing? So we're going to discuss that, and the TJ is particularly well placed to do that. And also we have Darius, who is Persolaise, who's a really big presence on YouTube. He's someone that I've been on some trips with. I always enjoy seeing him at events. Really intelligent, has a really cerebral approach, super smart and fascinating, and has been writing about fragrance for a long time. So it's a real thrill that he's joining the panel. So yeah, we're going to cover off lots of things. So fragrance from a male perspective, that's an hour talk. We're also going to have an opportunity to smell along with the audience, and we're going to get a couple of fragrances out and get the impressions of the panel, and then find out what people in the audience think. And also there will be time for questions too. So that's at 2:00. It's called Men Smell, with myself hosting and moderating, with Adam Hurley, Vesicalo, TJ Talks Sense, and Persolaise. So as I mentioned, it's all at barnesfragrancefair.com and at Barnes Fragrance Fair on Instagram, where you can find all the information. And as I said, it's absolutely free to come into the fair, but some of the talks, including mine, do have a ticketed cost element, which you can find out more about and book. I think it's via Eventbrite, but all the details are on the website. Now, it's well worth coming along to the Fragrance Fair anyway, because as well as my talks, which should be enough reason to come, let's face it, but there's also some of the best fragrance writers and people in the community, such as Alice Duparc. She's interviewing Sally Hughes, who's a really well-known beauty journalist. Joe Fairley, who is editor of The Scented Letter, will be there doing a workshop. Roger Dove from Roger Parfums will be there doing workshops. Susie and Nicola, my friends from the On the Scent podcast, will be doing a morning show, talking, kind of setting the scene, I suppose, for the day, and interviewing some people from the fair. So they'll be along. Loads of great events. It's all listed on the Barnes Fragrance Fair website, where you can find out who's doing what at what time. But as I said, an amazing opportunity to meet the founders and perfumers, get to talk to them and sample some of the fragrances and maybe see which is your favorite. But there's an opportunity to buy, of course. But just such a lovely atmosphere. And now it's the beginning of the week. It's going to take place on Saturday, and today's a lovely day on Monday. I'm hoping it's going to be just as beautiful this weekend, because there couldn't be a nicer spot in London to spend some time. So that's Saturday the 17th of May 2025, the Barnes Fragrance Fair. So I'll be there, and it would be lovely to see you, and please come and say hi if you're going to come along. The other thing I wanted to do was, again, I tend to try and do each season, whether it's just as a post on the socials or actually just to talk about it, is some of the products I'm enjoying at the moment. Now, it's something as you know, I like to ask each guest each week, just to find out a bit about some of the products that are in their routines. And to be honest, that tends to inform some of the things that I try and pick up or get sent, because it's always good to get recommendations. And again, it was one of the reasons that I started the podcast in the first place, was to, particularly in this skincare and grooming area, it wasn't something I knew as much about, and I was really keen to learn from people who know much more, or even just, it's not, I don't know, it didn't feel to be something that we often ask other men, what products do you use? So trying to normalize that. And definitely over these last few years, I think I've upped my game in terms of skincare and grooming, and all those things that we need to do that we tell ourselves, such as wear SPF. So, I've tried to build more time in and, enjoy that moment of self-care and actually be very intentional and make some time for it. So, yeah, some of the products, and I suppose we have Father's Day coming up in June. I'm in mid-May now, but in June it's Father's Day. So there could be one or two things that will be useful and worth bearing in mind for gifts. But I'm going to put all these products on the show notes and on the post for the social, so you can get a bit more information. But I've really been enjoying some new products from Jo Malone London, a brand that I love. Interestingly, quite recently they released a black cedarwood and juniper shaving cream and aftershave moisturizer. Now, I may be wrong, but I don't remember Jo Malone London doing a shaving cream or shaving products before. Now, you might be able to write in and correct me if that's not the case, but these are brand new. It's black cedarwood and juniper shaving cream and aftershave moisturizer. Now, being Jo Malone London, they're excellent quality. Just looking at the shaving cream, I mean, it's quite substantial. It's beautiful glass. I mean, it's going to look great on the shelf, but more than that, it works really well and is that Jo Malone London premium quality. And I've really been enjoying using that, as I have the aftershave moisturizer. And something else actually from Jo Malone London, they've got a new range exclusively at Selfridges called the Care Collection, which is inspired by the old Roman baths. And I suppose it's that slight move into spa and wellness, and they've got this beautiful range with Selfridges called the Care Collection, and I've been using the shower cream called Enrich, which again is, I don't know, just adds that elevated experience to the shower. And I've really been getting into shower creams recently, but that's a good one. It's called Enrich, which is a very rich lather that comes from the shower cream from Joe Malone London, available in Selfridges. And I think they're doing a collaboration with a spa place in London called Air Ancient Bath. So there's a number of treatments that you can get that are associated with Joe Malone London and Air Ancient Baths. So I'm going to put some details on that. In terms of fragrance, now the weather's getting better and the sun's out here in London. I've been loving Buongiorno from Acqua di Parma. Now, you may know I'm a big Acqua di Parma fan, and I got to see their flagship store in Milan actually twice this year. I've been very lucky. I went to Essence, which is the big fragrance expo and convention, in February, and got the chance to go to the flagship Milan store then, but also was back there last month on a press trip, and went again because it part of Design Week. They had this incredible installation at the Acqua di Parma store, but they just launched Buongiorno, which is from perfumer Emily Bouge, and you may have come across the candle or the diffuser before, which people loved. In the home fragrances now have been translated by Emily Bouge into Buongiorno Eau de Parfum, and oh my goodness, it's good for this time of year. These beautiful spearmints and herbaceous notes. There's rosemary in there, added to that classic Acqua di Parma DNA, which is that fresh citrusy cologne type profile, but here, taken in a slightly different direction, but given that real cut through with the spearmint and the rosemary. It's absolutely fantastic, and I've been wearing it so much. And what Acqua di Parma have been doing more recently with the Colonia Eau de Parfum and now Buongiorno is where often they were cologne strength, so which was perfectly great, but you'd spritz it on and maybe a few hours later you'd need to spritz again. They are releasing some of their fragrances now in the EDP, in the parfum strength, which means that they last a bit longer. So that's definitely the case with Buongiorno, but it's well worth checking out if you're anywhere near an Acqua di Parma store, because it's absolutely fantastic and is going to be one of my regular wears this summer. Another body shower cream product, this time from Aesop. It's called Elios, and it's a body cleanser, which I've been enjoying in my shower routine of late. Really spicy, woody, herbaceous. There's cedar in there, there's patchouli, and there's a clove note, which does give it this lovely spice and kick. And another cream, and I think it's the first time that Aesop have done a shower wash in a cream style consistency, which is so good. So I've been enjoying that. And in terms of my skincare, I bought them all myself. I had a voucher actually at Christmas time from Selfridges, and I decided to try out some products from Kiehl's. Now I've always used, or I've often used the face wash, the Facial Fuel face wash. Not easy to say. It's been a great product, but I decided to buy a few more products from that skincare range just to do my whole routine, if you like. So I've been using the Facial Fuel face wash, and then the Ultra Facial toner, and then I read it, someone was recommending it online, I can't remember who, but I wanted to, lots of people on the podcast have been talking about retinol, and it's not something I've used before, and Kiehl's have something called the Daily Microdose Serum. It's a retinol daily microdose serum, which felt like a good introduction, if you like, into the world of retinol, just to help with skin tone and fine lines and things like that. So I've added that into my routine, and then finally Kiehl's have an Age Defender moisturizer, which is the final step. So I guess I've added one more step than I normally would with the kind of cleanse, tone and moisturize, but I've added this retinol daily microdose serum. But so many people on the podcast have been talking to me about retinol, so I thought I need to get involved. Now, it's early days, I can't really in all good conscience tell you if it's made a massive difference, because I've only been doing it a few weeks, but I've built it into my routine, and I've got the full size bottles of all those products. So I'm going to stick with that for a while rather than chopping and changing around and seeing how I get on. Now, I'd be interested to know what you think of this, really. And I've spoken to a couple of guests about it before, but do you like to keep with one brand when you do your skincare routine? Does it make any difference? I mean, I suppose in theory it doesn't really. I guess you should buy the best product for the job. But I don't know whether it's my sort of neatness, but I thought I'd stick with Kiehl's and do the whole routine. And in fact, there was a really good sales assistant at Selfridges who probably upsold me on more than I wanted. But do you do that? Do you have different brands, or do you like to keep it consistent with one brand for the whole cleanse, tone, moisturize, morning or evening routine? I'd be interested to know. Please do let me know. In terms of hair care, I've been loving some of the Adam Reed archive products. Again, Adam was a guest, I think it was in the last season, at such a brilliant encyclopedic knowledge of fragrance for a start. But Adam Reed's a hairdresser who has a salon in Covent Garden. And in fact, as he mentioned in the podcast, has this archive Makes Sense fragrance line now, which is incredible, really well priced. There's 4 of them in the current collection, and they've gone into Boots and all kinds of major high street places because they're so well priced for what you get. And there's one called No One Elsey, which I absolutely love. It's got rhubarb and tomato leaf in there. It's fantastic. Anyway, his all day, everyday shampoo and conditioner have become regulars in my shower tray. Just great products. Seem to work really well, smell great, can't go wrong at all. So I've been enjoying those. So there you go, some products from Joe Malone London, from Acqua di Parma, from Aesop, and from Kiehl's and Adam Reed. Oh, and there's one more, which, let me grab it actually. A perfume brand called Veronique Gabai. And Veronique Gabai has released a new fragrance called Eau d'Azur. It's a brilliant play on the old Côte d'Azur. And her whole brand is located, I suppose, has its sort of centre in the Côte d'Azur, and that's very much, I think that's where she was brought up, so it's very special to her. And she's released this fragrance called Eau d'Azur, which, as you won't be surprised to know, it totally captures that glorious sunshine and sort of citrus spritz of that region. And it is, of course, a bright citrus. But what's interesting about this one is in the dry down, it warms quite unusually, but there's an oud note. So actually it settles into something a bit deeper and more nuanced and richer. And I've been loving it. And we know with some of the citrus notes, they're quite ephemeral, and they're quite, that's just the way the molecules are. They don't last forever. And, as people have often said on the podcast, just spritz again, don't worry about it. But I know some people, the performance and the longevity is more important, but this one definitely has some staying power. And I only got it last week, but I've been wearing it quite a lot. And the Veronique Gabai range is absolutely beautiful. I was lucky enough to meet her last year. Actually, I went for lunch, and she was charming. And I really enjoyed her company, and told me all about the provenance of the brand and what she's up to. But that's a one to look out for. Probably more a department store fragrance, I think, is going to be in the sort of finer department stores. But Eau d'Azur, if you like that kind of profile of classy, citrus, spritzy kind of fragrance, that's definitely one to have a look out for. So I think that's it. I'm going to wrap up this little mini pod. So the 2 real things to tell you about was the Barnes Fragrance Fair, which is the 17th of May, which is this coming Saturday in 2025 in Barnes in West London. And just wanted to tell you about some of the products I've been enjoying, and whether you want to check them out, or a gift for someone for a birthday or for Father's Day that's coming up, certainly here in the UK in June. So look, thank you for joining me for the whole of season 9, and of course to all my guests that have featured. There's going to be lots more. I'm going to take a little short break for a month or so, but I'll be back in the summer with season 10 and more guests. Thank you for your company, and if you're able to like and subscribe to the podcast, or even leave a review, that would be much appreciated, to let other people know what you think of it and what the content is and episodes you've enjoyed, things like that. So in the meantime, I'll still be on the socials and be active on there so you can see what's going on. And by all means, reach out. It'd be great to hear from you. And I hope to see some of you on Saturday the 17th of May at the Barnes Fragrance Fair for those 2 talks. But I fully appreciate that lots of people are in different parts of the country and indeed different parts of the world. So I think at some point the talks are going to be uploaded to the Barnes Fragrance Fair website, where there'll be an opportunity to sort of buy the stream of it, so you can kind of see it at a later date, which is useful. So thank you for your company. I've really enjoyed this season. Enjoy a little break from me, but there's plenty of episodes to catch up on if you're missing your Man in the Mirror hit. And I'll see you in the summertime. But until then, take care.